free speech is saying what you want to say. It's also hearing what you don't want to hear. There's plenty on these so-called free speech platforms that I don't like to see. I don't like to see transgenderism pushed on children, but unfortunately that's been in existence on Meta platforms and on TikTok for several years now.
Tomi Lahren, Layeth the SmackDown on this. I don't know her name. I just know her first name is Eli. Let's see what Tomi Lahren has to say on the Piers Morgan show.
We heard it pretty well there from the professor, that from a biological point of view, never mind anything else, from a straight scientific biological point of view, a man cannot be a woman. What is your response to that?
He is completely unscientific and so bound up in his ideology that he isn't even paying attention to the vast majority of biologists, including those from the American Academy of Sciences, who disagree with him and do acknowledge that sex describes a variety of different characteristics that can be changed.
Do you not accept, there's a reason, for example, that we separate the sexes at the Olympics. It's because there is a presumption based on reality, fact, data, that biological men are superior in almost every physical way imaginable. They're more powerful, they're faster, they're stronger, they have greater lung capacity, and that if you didn't separate the sexes, if you took this to its logical extension, where biological men who become trans women start to just compete in the Olympics all in a free-for-all, a gender-neutral Olympics.
I'm sorry, but look at this. Look at this panel right here. You got Tomi Lahren, who looks, normal. And you got, God, this grimacing wacko right here in the middle. And then you got Brianna Wu. I don't know where Brianna Wu is going to come in on this debate. Normally, she was like this. Before she was like this lefty, woke person, but the last few times I've seen her on Piers Morgan, she was kind of reasonable, but whatever. Let's see how this goes.
And biological women would simply never win a medal again.
There has never been a trans woman who has won a gold in the Olympics.
Hang on. We literally just had at the Paris Olympics the Algerian boxer, welterweight
She's
division.
not a trans woman.
I'm about to tell you what
For all that we know, she is intersex. She was assigned female at birth.
All we know is she was banned from the World Championships the year before because she reportedly tested positive for male chromosomes. Now,
this does not mean she's a trans woman.
Why doesn't she just take a simple sex test and show us?
We can't speculate about someone's
Actually,
chromosomes.
we can when they win gold medals, because you just said it's never happened. When a woman, or says she's a woman, wins a gold medal in a women's sport, and when one of the female competitors who competed against her in an earlier round said she had to quit after 40 seconds because she'd never been hit that hard, damn right we can ask some difficult questions, even if it tramples on a few little oversensitive feelings. It is ridiculous. There was no sex test done.
Said she supports a main Khalif's right to participate.
Why didn't she have a sex test to clear this up?
Again, I can't speculate about someone's gender.
But would you not support having sex tests? It's the easiest way to determine somebody's sex. You give them a test.
I think, like Neil deGrasse Tyson said, that we should have different levels of competition.
How? Explain to me how that would work.
There are different metrics, and this would depend sport by sport. Most sports now do allow trans women to compete. I also do want to correct something, too, that there have been several trans men who have won in male competitions at the global level.
What were the competitions?
This includes everything from rugby to swimming.
Rugby? You think there's a trans man who's beaten all the men at rugby?
I'm not saying that a trans man is the best person in the world, the best rugby player in the world, but there are plenty of trans men who have competed at the global level.
Yeah,
this is very easy to
there
Google.
Aren't plenty. There are very, very few. And what they don't do is they don't win because they're physically inferior. Tomi Lahren,
again...
OK, let me bring in Tomi. We've got two other panellists. Tomi, look, to me, it's a simple question of biology, as we heard from the professor. And when I hear, with all due respect to Eli, and I absolutely respect your right to have your opinion, but I just think it's flying in the face of basic fact.
It is. And, Piers, I wonder, is it going to take a female athlete being seriously injured or even killed for people to understand how serious this is? It has nothing to do with transphobia and bringing up trans men or biological women who are competing against men because they are trans men, whatever the terminology is for all of that. You don't see the outrage at that because, as you mentioned, Piers, they're not winning. They're not crushing the competition. And if they have, it's in very, very few cases that are negligible. What you're seeing also, you're not seeing the outrage about that because it's very few cases, I haven't heard of any, where trans men, biological women who are transitioning to men, want to be in men's locker rooms, that want to make men feel uncomfortable while they're changing, being in their changing space, watching them undress. So it's a completely different situation. And when you ignore not only biology, but when you ignore gender itself, why should biological women, and I don't even like saying that, Piers, I don't like even referring to myself as a
women.
Biological woman. I'm a woman, okay? I was born that way. I don't like having to preface that with what I am biologically.
Yeah.
I'm a woman. Why should me and other women like me have to put up with competing against men or having men in our locker rooms, men in our restroom, because it makes a very, very small segment of the population feel better about themselves? Why do their feelings trump the feelings of women?
Yeah.
That's what I don't understand in this argument, in this debate.
No, I don't. And Brianna,
Tomi Lahren is absolutely correct there. I mean, it's not really that hard to be correct in this debate. I mean, it's pretty much a given. If there is no biological differences between men and women when it comes to sports, then why are there separation of sports? Why is there women's sports and why is there men's sports? Why don't we just let them all compete together if it really doesn't matter that much? Tomi Lahren also brought up a good point about the locker room situation. Like, yeah, there's not outrage because it's not a case of a trans man going into a man's locker room and, perving all the dudes and oh, look at all these dongs around here, and if it were, I don't think, I'm not sure how offended the men would be. If anything, the men dressing around the trans man would maybe make the trans man feel more uncomfortable than the other way around. However, you have these cases where trans women, men dressed like women, are going into women's spaces in their locker rooms, potentially ogling at all of them, and it's like a Trojan horse situation. They're on the inside now. Now you just gotta. And absolutely, this is done just to make a minority of people feel more comfortable, feel more better about themselves. That's all this is, at the expense of a majority. What do you guys think about this so far? Sound off in the comment section below. Smash that like button if you're enjoying this. Let's continue.
Trying to pretend it's fine for trans women to be in women's sport because they know everybody laughs at it and makes them a laughing stock. They just want to lead their lives like the rest of us. And I wish they could without being dragged into this crap.
Yeah, and Piers, look no further than the way that Caitlyn Jenner is treated by the left and by many in the LGBTQ rainbow mafia, as I call them. That is that far left fringe part of the LGBTQ movement that is seemingly louder than the rest of the movement, and that's really unfortunate. But I'll tell you, Piers, what I think a lot of this comes down to. I think that there are a lot of activists and a lot of activist organizations out there that make a lot of money on this issue. And if it were not for this controversy, if it were not for them continuing to encroach on women's rights and women's sports and women's spaces, they wouldn't have a job title. They wouldn't have a crusade. They wouldn't be able to fundraise. So whereas many people are completely fine with LGBTQ, they support it, people living their lives, I'm one of those people. Once you start pushing people too far, you're going to get the backlash. But I don't think these activists mind the backlash. In fact, I think they thrive off of it, and I think they make their paychecks off of it because they love it. They love keeping this at the center of controversy. That's the only way a lot of these organizations can exist. That's the only way a lot of these nonprofits can exist. And that's the only way that some of these people can take huge salaries pretending to be and cosplaying to be advocates for the LGBTQ community. And it's really a shame.
And Tommy, what did you make of Mark Zuckerberg, his extraordinary statement on all previous Facebook, Instagram policies about including the gender issue. He said, we do allow now allegations of mental illness or abnormality when based on gender or sexual orientation, given political and religious discourse about transgenderism and homosexuality and common non-serious usage of words like weird. These are revised company guidelines. Do you feel completely comfortable with that? I mean, do you think we should be encouraging people to say that all trans people are mentally ill or they're weird or whatever? Or do you think that slightly crosses a line of being fair and equal to them?
Well, listen, free speech is saying what you want to say. It's also hearing what you don't want to hear. There's plenty on these so-called free speech platforms that I don't like to see. I don't like to see transgenderism pushed on children, but unfortunately, that's been in existence on Meta platforms and on TikTok for several years now. It's unfortunate. So I think you need to open up the other side of the conversation. I'm not all the way optimistic that Meta is actually going to do that. I mean, anytime we talk about even equality for women in women's sports and them being able to compete at a high level with other women, you're censored on Meta platforms. I know because I work for Outkick that talks about this issue a lot and is at the forefront of the issue. So I'm cautiously optimistic. But listen, I don't agree with bullying people, calling people mentally ill or weird. I don't personally do that. I don't like it. However, if you're going to have a platform that talks about both sides of the issue, you have to let the other side be able to speak as well. I'm hopeful that we can see that.
Yeah, and Eli, if you're getting professors who are not remotely transphobic, like my last guest, getting told to shoot themselves dead, fillet a gun in their mouths, as he put it, what right does the other side have to then say, well, you can't use mean words like weird about us? Genuinely.
Well, that's a huge generalization, Piers. I don't support anyone encouraging abuse or harm to anyone. And most trans people don't either. Like Brianna said, there is a very reactionary fringe who may engage in these very harmful behaviors and rhetoric. This doesn't represent all trans people. And surprisingly, I also find myself agreeing with Tomi that no, we should not have bullying on these platforms. And this means also not calling trans people weird. This new policy actually infringes on free speech because personally, when I'm called mentally ill or weird, I stop engaging, and that obstructs my ability and willingness to speak. So what this policy is doing is discouraging queer and trans people, along with migrants who are also included in this policy, from speaking on their own behalf.
What kind of ridiculousness is that and lunacy? I mean, oh yeah, actually having more free speech is actually restricting speech because then people say mean things to me and it makes me not want to say anything. So therefore, it's actually restricting my free speech. It's like, no, you're still allowed to do that. You're still allowed to talk. And so what you're basically saying is, well, no, these people who are calling me mentally ill, they should be restricted. They shouldn't be allowed to speak, therefore, so I could speak. And we don't know the context of what she's saying. I don't know what her posts are. For all we know, she could be pushing this, stuff onto children or anything like that, and she's getting backlash for it. And like, well, you're restricting my free speech. It's like, no, you're getting backlash because you're doing something kind of awful. In terms about calling, some of these people mentally ill, I mean, look, I'm not... Like, listen, like I said, look at this panel. Like, look at these two, okay? And I know Brianna Wu's being she's on the reasonable side here. Like, she's kind of a reasonable trans person. Like, she's still trans. She still pushes the ideology. But, she's a little bit more reasonable. She's not as unhinged as this person. Like, she's kind of gone more to the center over the few years. But still, look at these two. Do you look at these two and say, yeah, they're the epitome of mental health? Like, clearly there's something going on with both of them. I don't know what it is. Maybe some trauma or something like that. But something clearly happened to both of them that made them turn out this way. So I don't think it's inaccurate to say that they're mentally ill. People take that as like, oh, terrible, like you're not allowed to say that. Like, listen, I'm not saying we shouldn't treat them with any dignity or any rights or respect or anything like that. I'm not saying, well, it's okay to go after these two. I'm not saying it's okay to harass them or bully them or assault them or anything like that. I'm not saying we should treat them as lesser people or anything like that. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm just calling it for what it is. There's something going on in the heads of these two that are making that's making her think that she's a woman and making her, I don't know, look like this. Good job, Tomi Lahren, taking down this Eli over here. That's not hard to do. I mean, when you're arguing on the side of common sense, it's not hard. So good job, Tomi. Good job, Piers. What'd you guys think about this? Sound off in the comment section below. Subscribe to my channel if you enjoy content like this. And if you do enjoy content like this, I have a whole bunch more like Tomi Lahren and Piers Morgan videos for you to binge on and enjoy.